I just have a look at my HPO1. It is
HPO1?
at 12:30 and 51 seconds. It only shows the time for 2.5 seconds.
And what vintage is that?
77.
77. I'll just check the time too on my 1975 pulsar time computer, which doesn't work.
And if it did work, could you use the time of day in your calculations? Which you can.
Yes, you're right. Good, good. What's that? 12:28. I'll give the stragglers one more minute. 30 seconds. Okay, I think we're good. Let's start. So I've been doing some research on behalf of the ACMS, and I've been helped by a bunch of people, including those around me, and that research is around Australian computing, specifically. This particular part of that is Australian kit computers. So, okay, next one, page down, I believe. Not working? Yeah, we're good, okay. So I'm a collector. If you have any technical questions, these people are much better than myself at answering that stuff. The structure of this presentation will be a chronological slideshow where I'll show you a slideshow of Australian kit machines. And then we'll go in a bit more detail into the Educate, the Dream 6800, the Tech 1, the ET685, and we'll do a couple of minutes on the Applex 1616 as well. So part of this project has been gathering data, gathering sources, gathering machines, learning how to restore machines. We've got a ton of data. We've got maybe 1,200 Australian machines listed, 2,000 Australian games. I think there's probably another 1,000 Australian applications that have been built since the 70s. We've got 250, I think around 250 manufacturers, Australian manufacturers. And right now we're up to 47 kit computers and single board computers from the 70s to the mid-90s. So kit computers in general, what is a kit computer? It's, I think nowadays we think of kit computers as being these small build your own projects that were released in electronics magazines. But there were kits as well that weren't released in magazines. But our story starts in 1974 with the Educate. Initially, they thought that it was the first kit computer in the world, the first magazine-produced kit computer anyway, in the world. But it was beaten to it by 1 month by the Mark 8, that's this one, in radio electronics in July 1974. And as I said, there are machines before this. There's even talk of relay machines being mentioned in electronics magazines substantially before this as well. But, you know, for the purposes of this talk, we'll start it in 1974. So the first machine is the Educate, August 1974. Now this thing's quite complicated. It's got, well, we're going to go in depth anyway into the Educate. Now this is only a really brief slideshow, and then these guys are going to give us the real content. And you know, there's still an Educate scene. Yes.
Did you make these slides?
I did make these slides. Yes.
I think if you move to that way at the back of it, we might be able to see them.
Ah, yes. I'll move this.
And then you'll be able to see your computer as well.
I'll move the desk. Oh, there we go.
I can't help myself. Excellent.
Nice work. Thank you. Yeah, so we're at the 50th. The 50th anniversary edition was released last year, I guess. That's, yeah, okay. So there's a massive gulf between 1974 and the next one, which is the Baby 2650, released in, this is Jim Rowe as well. Jim Rowe did the Educate. And so this one's March 1977, and it is a 2650 based machine. I've got my stats here, Signetics 2650. So I'll go on to the next one. That, by the way, has 256 bytes of RAM, like the Educate, running at 1 megahertz, that is. Miniscamp. So April in 1977, the Miniscamp. That's the SCMP, the ISP 8A500D SCMP to be exact, and 0.67 megahertz. Next one. Well, that's inside the Miniscamp there. The next one was in 1978. It's basically a carbon copy, well, very similar to the Baby 2650. That's the 2650 mini computer system. Again, Signetics 2650 based. And you can see there's nothing in there. Yeah. There were additions to several of these machines. The Mini 2650, I'm not sure, I don't have the notes in front of me, but yeah. That much space, yeah. I mean, you can see there the board is very similar to the 1977 Baby 2650. So this is the 1979, the Dream 6800. Steve here is going to show us the Dream 6800 in detail and show us a game. But yeah, so that's the Motorola MC 6800 running at 4 megahertz. There's initially 1K of ROM, and 1K of RAM initially, built by Mike Bauer. And then there is the Dream 6802, which was not built by Mike, released soon after. The ETI 680, which we actually have here, it's in the other room. All right, and that was, 1979. 2 or 4 megahertz. David Griffith's Z80 based single board computer that was released as a kit. And then there's another one. There's another one that's not here actually, but we won't worry about that one. This is not a complete list, but we're trying to get a complete list. So if you see something, or you know of something that's not on this list, then let me know. Yeah, we're still gathering data. All right, so then we go over into Gen Y. So those are all Gen X machines from the 1970s. Then we got millennials here. So this is the ETI 660, which was actually a New Zealand design. If we are counting it as Australian, yeah, that's right, then it's the first colour kit computer to be released in Australia. The other one is the Excalibur 64, which was released a few years later. There's arguments, on both sides that whether or not the 660 should be considered an Australian machine. I think it should. The Super 80, 1981. And the Super 80, again, a Z80 machine running at 2 megahertz, 2K ROM, maximum of 48K RAM. Yeah, these are all kits, yeah. All kits, Yeah. So ETI 685, Ron will be showing that in detail, so I won't go into that. It's a 2650 base machine. Then we've got the original Microbee kit. You know, Microbee was also released as a fully built computer after this, but it was initially a kit. 1982, the Datum trainer. This trainer was used to actually build something cool, which was a MIDI. Yeah, there's a machine built using the Datum as its base, a MIDI controlling machine that's actually in the Conservatorium of Music in Sydney, and it's based on the Datum with some expansions. Greg Shamia. I don't know if I pronounced his name right. Steve, do you know how to pronounce his name? Shima, Greg Shima, yeah. I've got Lysdexia. All right. Datum trainer. So, I mean, this is not strictly a kit, but I put it in there because Steve has been helping with the restorations of some of these machines. We've got, I think, 4 now that are being restored. So he restored this one. This is an Australian-built trainer machine used in Sydney, I believe. Oh no, Mel.
I think going back to it was a kit because it was built at various TAFE colleges for the students. Either the students built it or it was built for the students to operate. In my case, it was built for me to operate.
Yeah.
I met someone who built one.
Oh, okay. There we go. Data gets added to the list. In the 70s and 80s. Yeah, in the early days, yes. Well, I mean, yeah, all brand new. People wanted to know about computers and couldn't get their hands on them. You know, cost, yeah.
There's different microcontrollers, so everybody was building systems on different microcontrollers. So you've got Intel, you've got Motorola, Signetics, RCA, there's a whole stack. And some, for one reason or another, they were involved with a particular microcontroller and then developed a system around that.
My recollection is that there was a fairly heavy sales tax on computers that were being
The tariffs talk. Yeah.
if you sold things as a kit, then you only had to put it on a box and plug it in the house. It was half the price and you had something ready to run.
Yeah, well, they were still criminally expensive though, back in the day. These things cost a lot of money, as you'd know. The tech one, the tech one, once we get into the millennials, they become cheaper, right? You know, got to go to Gen X for that quality. Okay, no, the tech one's an amazing. This is one of the most popular Australian kit computers of all time. The Tech One. Yeah, Talking Electronics Tech One, and there are lots of them. But initially, there was that 80 base machine. Yeah.
It was cheaper than having a parrot to talk to.
Yeah, right. The tech ones go up to Mr. Yellick there built the latest one, the Tech 1G. Yes. And there it is in all its glory. So after that came the Excalibur 64 from BGR. I've got a podcast episode yet to release that's been sitting there for ages with Don McKenzie, Alan Lawton, and Mike, what's his second name? Forgotten Mike's second name, but I'll release that soon. The Excalibur 64, as I said before, was a colour machine. They like to refer to it as the colour TRS-80, I think, is what they say. And yeah, like a lot of these boards, there are new versions out there, like the Excalibur 64-2, for example. So when we were compiling this list of kit computers, Steve mentioned that there was, you know, we're missing anything built with the 6502. And okay, it was a very good observation because we wanted to see patterns in the data. But what it turns out is that Steve had identified a problem, but it was that we're missing some data. And here is one of those machines, the Rabble 65 built in 83 with the 6502. I'm trying to burn through these so these guys can do the demonstrations. There's PBuff 1984, printer buffer initially, but it's got a Z80 on it. Don McKenzie from Dontronics built that one. Then we've got the controversial microcomp from 1985. Mark, what can you tell us about the microcomp?
It was dearly hated by John Hardy, which designed the Tech One, because I don't know the story behind why Colin pushed that as much as he did, and he kind of derailed talking electronics computers in general, because really where he should have been focusing on adding extra things to the Tech One and making it better, he diverted over to the microcomp, which was a great thought experiment, but doesn't really achieve much, doesn't do much. But other than being miniaturized and cool, and you can put out some program, but it kind of rifted the talking electronics community at the time.
What's the processor on?
Z80.
Oh, yeah.
And can you tell us how much RAM it had? Zero.
In that regard, it's actually can do things quite capably.
Yeah.
You have to, obviously write it in ROM very carefully, but zero RAM whatsoever does everything in registers. It's a bit of a pain in the ass.
But it's got a following. I mean, there's the Microcomp 2, which was released recently. I like it. Yeah, well, yeah, sorry. Okay, right, yeah. Good. There's this one. I'm not. I mean, Alan. Who knows Alan Lawton here? A bunch of you do, but he gave me this one, the Talking Electronics Micro Pro. I haven't done enough research on this one, but I'd like to know more. If anyone knows about this machine, let me know. Yeah, what does it use? TI something, yeah. Yeah. There you go. See, I know nothing about it. Let's move on. There's this thing, the Flex 9 single board computer. And the Flex 9 has no microprocessor filled in yet. Okay. No, it's a Motorola 6809 for that one. And then we've got the ETI 662A, released in 1985, and that is a 6802. Next one after that, come on, let's go. Next one after that is the ETI 694.
Is there some logic to the numbering system they use?
Yeah, it's a good question, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The number was appropriated to a particular development, and that development took 6 months or 12 months to get the article printed, written up and completed. So it ended up out of sequence.
So the next one is the Applix 1616. Paul here actually can tell us about that. So do you want to give us a minute or two on that?
Sure. Yeah, okay. So that's actually the ETI 1616, and ETI just happened to be very close to that number, and we had 16 colours, and it was a 16-bit processor, so that's why it was called a 1616. Yeah, that was kind of built on a whim. It was really, we just wanted to make the last great kit computer, and it was, the IBM PC had been launched and the Mac had been launched, so kit computing was starting to maybe not be a thing. But yeah, we were reasonably successful with that. We sold about 500 units, and we wrote an operating system for it and ported a C compiler, and we had a lot of ex-Micro:b guys. So it's fun. We really enjoyed that. Yeah, they've sort of had a bit of a second, like a rebirth or something. They're fairly scarce nowadays, so they're quite collectible, which is kind of cool, actually. Yeah.
68,000 based, is it?
Yeah, 68,000. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a funny story. We needed a 68,000 base computer to write the operating system, and funny enough, the cheapest 68,000 machine we could come across was an Apple Lisa, because they were kind of basically doorstops at that point in time, and we found a cheap copy of a thing, Xenix, Microsoft Xenix, which is a Unix thingy. And yeah, so we wrote the operating system on that until we could actually get a C compiler running on this, and we could actually write the operating system on it, bootstrap it, I guess. Yeah. So yeah.
And did the OS that you wrote for it have any? What's its lineage?
Unix-ish. My partner at the time, a guy called Andrew Morton, he's still probably the smartest guy I've ever come across. Like, he's an absolute freak. And he went on, and I think he actually still works for Google. And for a long time, he was, pretty well the keeper of the Linux kernel. And that's kind of all came from this operating system, to be honest. Yeah. So the source code for the OS is actually floating around on the web somewhere, and but eventually we had a pretty active users group, which surprisingly is still going. Yeah, and we had a shop in Sydney initially, yeah, so there was a thing around which is kind of like the forerunner, Minix is called, and yeah, quite a couple of the guys got Minix running on it, and a Windows, kind of front end and stuff. Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's move on. Thanks, Paul. I love the 68K. It's a great CPU, great microprocessor. Okay, we've got the ETI 1613. I'm just going to really quickly go through these now because we've run out of time. And the Southern Cross board, which has got its own sort of community now as well. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so that's so now we're going to bring up Dale, and he's going to talk about the Educate and give us a demonstration. I've got some slides here too. Thanks, Dale.
Thanks, Riley.
I'll run the slides if you want.
That's all right. No, that's fine.
You can do it.
Yep. Hi, I'm Dale, and it's my pleasure to. Sorry, my name's Dale, and it's my pleasure to talk about the Educate computer. It's not cooperating with me at the moment, so I may or may not be able to give you a demonstration right now, but we're probably running out of time anyway, thanks to Riley. So you've done me a favour, I think. So, in August 1974, Jamison Rowe published the first article, which became a series describing the Educate computer. And thank you. And it was based on TTL logic, so there was no microprocessor, and it had all of 256 bytes of RAM. When it was first conceived, it had 32 bytes of RAM. It's hard to imagine you could do very much with 32 bytes of RAM. It's a struggle to do much with 256, but I digress. Anyway, I've had some correspondence with Jamison Rowe, and he thought that around 400 of these machines were built. And there's been several in recent years, because I've got one, Riley's got one, and there's a few others built as well, and there's an active Facebook group who are sort of following the subject. At the time, TTL was still quite expensive. the estimated cost was $300 to build one of these machines just in 1974. So that's around $2,900 today. So it wasn't cheap, and it would have been quite an undertaking because it was an awful lot of work. So what's its specifications? So it's an 8-bit machine, but it's an 8-bit serial machine, so it's got a 1-bit ALU. It has 5 registers. That's the program counter, the accumulator, the memory address register, the memory buffer register, and the instruction register. And they are all displayed, you can see here on the front panel. The important register is displayed in LED, so you could actually see what's going on as the machine was running. And that turns out to be quite useful. The only way to program it in the original version was through using the switches on the front panel. So it's a bit like the original PDP-8 computers and its predecessors, where you had to key in a bootloader through a series of switches. The machine itself was very similar to a PDP-8. It has some I/O channels. It's got 2 input channels and 2 output channels, and they're a serial synchronous type of channel, and you have to have a shift register to shift data in and out. It's quite simple, but it's quite flexible as well. And there's 27 instructions it can execute. So the usual sorts of, and, or, well, you can't do an or, but yeah, you can clear the register and various other things. So it's the usual types of instructions, but we'll run through those in a minute. So general construction. You may have seen it when I had it on display in the other room. There's 6 circuit boards. Well, there's a picture of it there. Top one is a timing board, and then the other boards go down. The back is the power supply. The front panel, which you can see there, is for downloading and programs and checking its operation. And there's nearly 100 chips scattered across those circuit boards. You can still get them. Nothing's hard to get if you wanted to build one. It's an Intel 2115. It's not especially... Yeah,
Shift register?
Oh, well, I don't know about that. I've never seen that version. It may well have been. But in this version, and the versions that were certainly published, uses the Intel 2115, which you can still get, second-hand, of course, not necessarily new, but I've had no trouble with the ones I've bought. So here's the instruction set. There's 16, the opcodes, so you can address memory reference, you can do various other things like increment the accumulator, all the usual sorts of binary operations, and copying some of the facilities of the PDP-8 with these combined micro instructions, which turn out to be quite handy because they save you some opcodes. A series of input-output instructions, so setting input flags or reading flags and sending data in and out. So it's quite, it's surprisingly sophisticated, actually. I was surprised at how useful and how well thought out the instruction codes are and what they allow you to do. So the design philosophy was really as an educational machine. It's hard to imagine that it could be useful for many other things, but turns out it can be and has been used in some applications. So it was really to educate people in the use of computers, because it was the very dawn of personal computing. And one of the stated aims of Jim Rowe was to get people trained so they were employable in what was then rapidly growing industry. It could be relatively easily assembled using relatively inexpensive components, even though it was still an expensive thing to build. So as an indicator, a scaled-down version of a digital equipment PDP-8, which is a very popular machine at the time, supposedly one of the machines that really started the mini-computer boom, because it was something like less than $100,000 to buy, which seems like still an expensive machine. And the coding is set up to be almost identical to the PDP-8. So the code for the educate, if you're familiar with the PDP-8 assembly language, it's very similar. So what are the limitations? Well, obviously the 256 bytes of RAM, but that's not as limited as you might think. The instruction set appears to be limited, but it's very flexible and it's well thought out. So it lets you do things in single instructions that other machines would take multiple instructions. So it's actually quite nice. And I've grown to like it a lot. It's relatively slow, being a serial machine. Its raw clock speed was 500 kilohertz. So because it does each bit at a time and it takes 24 clock cycles to do a complete operation, it operates around about 20 kilo operations per second. Not fast, but it's still adequate for many applications. There's absolutely no commercial software or technical support. You can completely on your own, which was initially challenging, so I ended up writing an assembler for it, which certainly helped a lot. So I can write an assembler on my laptop and download it and run it. I also wrote a simulator for it too, so I can actually do development on the laptop and then download it to the machine knowing that it will run. Perhaps the biggest hardware limitation is that there's no easy ability to do multi-precision mathematics, so that you can't carry forward a carry operation from one operation to the next. So that's called the link register in the PDP-8 machines. You can work around it, and I have workarounds, but it's complicated. And having a link register to allow multi-precision maths would have been really useful, but it wasn't to be. So what can you do with it? Well, to date, I have a game of Conway's Game of Life and its naive life variations. So that's cellular automata, and it's quite an interesting program. You set the computer going and it plays itself, I suppose is the best way to describe it. I have a maybe working version here, but I probably won't have time to demonstrate it here, and the computer's not cooperating anyway. A Fibonacci sequence generator. So that's where you take two numbers and add it and blah, 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 blah. That works quite nicely. Getting back to the Conway's Game of Life, the whole thing fits in 250 bytes of memory. So that's an 8 by 16 array of cells and the necessary code to make it work. The Fibonacci sequence generator takes a bit less than that. You may have heard of a thing called brainfuck, which is a higher level interpreter. And I've got a working version of that on the machine. So you can actually write in brainfuck, if you're crazy enough, to do almost anything, because it's so-called Turing complete and should let you do anything. And one thing I did build was a 64K expansion memory, which lets you actually write reasonably lengthy programs. But it does it very slowly because it's an interpreter. Call it a compiler. It's a cross between a compiler and an interpreter, but it does it slowly. And of course, lots of test and debugging code as you do when you're building these sorts of things. So, what were the peripherals? So Jim designed a number of useful peripherals for the machine, most of which I've built. So ASCII serial input-output. Originally, of course, it was on a teletype machine with punched paper tape. Sadly, I don't have one of those. A line printer using a little matrix printer. I've got a simulated one there using a point of sales printer, which $30, quite amazing value. A little music player, which I had running before, demonstrating its capabilities of playing music. That uses a top octave synthesizer from an electronic organ, and that works very nicely. Paper tape, storage, data storage using cassettes. That's the one bit I haven't built yet, although I've got the bits. So eventually I'll get round to building a cassette tape system for saving programs and being able to download programs. And Jim also presented ideas for memory expansion.
Yeah, my recollection is that at that time, memory was very bloody expensive. And if you had full card memory, you're doing well. If you could afford a late card, you're very well off. And things had to be done logically and efficiently in the system. And one of the sort of things that happened at that cave was that time being able to reuse different sections of memory over and over again to eventually get to a final result rather than just adding two numbers together.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yep, indeed.
One of the, I guess, memorable, or should be memorable machines in the history of computing has been overlooked as far as I'm concerned, because there are features there and facilities that people went on to use in bigger and better machines without any acknowledgement.
Quite probably. So, in conclusion, so it's the Educate's a rare example of a machine that people could build from scratch. It could be built by anyone. Need a soldering iron. In fact, I've built two, and the first one was built on Vera board with lots of wire. I'll never do that again. But it works. In fact, it's more reliable than that one. So the Educate was a very early part of the rapid growth of personal computing in Australia. So it's unique in that sense because it was an Australian publication, Australian designed. The author is still alive. So Jim Rowe is still around, and I've corresponded with him on this thing. He's quite amazed that anyone's still interested in it. And he could never imagine that people would be still building these things 50 years on, given its limitations. But I believe it's historically significant in an Australian context, and it was just a shame that it got pipped at the post by 1 month. So.
You should have got a knighthood for his contribution to science and technology.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it was so much, it was a foundation really of electronics magazines in Australia, and many things, many designs he published across a whole range of different electronics technologies. So you're right, he should have got on the knighthood or something. So anyway, that's the Educate, and I won't run a demonstration now given the time and the fact that my machine's not behaving itself, but I'll try and get it going for when we're back in the other hall. So thank you.
Thanks, Dale. We've got Steve up next with a Dream 6800.
Sorry? No, it's okay. It's okay. Yep. There we go. All right, my name is Steve. The Dream 6800. So I'm here to talk about Dream 6800. Does anybody know what the acronym DREAM stands for?
A female looking like a dream.
No. No? No takers? Something or other?
Digital, real, electronic.
Expandable, something.
Domestic? Something? No one? Doesn't ring a bell to anybody? Oh, I had a gift for whoever could guess it, but anyway. Domestic, recreational, educational and adaptive microcomputer. All right, so come and see me over at the stand later. Maybe I'll ask another quiz. I've got some gifts for people. So the Dream 6800, it came out in 1979, published in Electronics Australia. Mike would have started designing in 78. That's a picture of Mike Bauer there in the interview we did with him last year. We'll talk about Mike in a moment. It was inspired by the Cosmac VIP, which was in a Byte magazine in 1977. So the Cosmac VIP is an interesting machine designed by Joe Weisbecker. This is it here. Joe based it on a processor that he designed, which is the 1802 processor, and then created a very simple graphics programming language called Chip 8. So Mike read all about this in Byte magazine. I think there was a couple of articles. He'd never seen one. He didn't have the processor for it, but Mike was keen on the 6800 processor. So he started to build and design his own version of the Cosmac VIP based on a 6800 processor.
he had access to the Motorola MEK 6800D1 development board, and he was working at Deakin University in Geelong. They had a DEC system, someone didn't update the slides, they had a DEC system 20, but they didn't have a cross-assembler for it, so he wrote his own cross-assembler in Fortran. That's because he can, yeah. He's a very clever fella. He's online, you can see his website, mjbauer.biz, I think it is. Something like that, you can look it up, quite easy. He's the nicest fella, very clever fella. He designed a polyphonic synthesizer in, I forgot the date exactly, but a very early, like 1975 or something like that. And that's his machine that he built there. You can see the Motorola MEK 6800D2, that's mine that's sitting there next to him because we couldn't find a D1. And there's his prototype sitting there. So we had a good interview with him when he talked about basic stuff, how he designed it and so on. It was very interesting. Very simple machine. So he used the 6800 processor rather than the 1802. I don't think he could access the 1802, but he knew, he was comfortable with the 6800 and had some prototype bits. The video resolution of the Cosmic VIP was 64 by 32. It was done with the 1861 Pixie chip, which these days is very, very rare. Mike foresaw that that's going to be a troublesome chip to get in the future. So he designed his own logic there. Basically halts the CPU and writes directly into RAM, into the video RAM basically. So while the CPU is halted, it tri-states all the data bus and address bus, so then you can access the RAM directly, and there's counters and you can see there. It's all very clever, all very standard TTL mixed in with some CMOS logic. The only weird bit is the clock generator chip for the 6800. Riley says it runs at 4 megahertz. It doesn't, it runs at 1 megahertz. The crystal's 4 megahertz, but it needs a weird non-overlapping clock, 2 clock signals for the 6800. That's why it's 4 megahertz. This weird chip is also very troublesome to get, but they saw that in an article when they first built it, and it was going to be troublesome, so they actually designed a TTL logic circuit to generate the clock without worrying about that chip. Another update that Riley didn't get around to, it had 1K of RAM, the infamous 2114s. Chip OS is what he calls the monitor ROM, or the system that runs it. It was in a 2708 1K EEPROM. In that, he had the chip 8 interpreter, which is based on the information from Joe's articles in Byte magazine. So he just read the articles, okay, these instructions need to do this. Mike implemented it in the 6800. Quite amazing achievement, all into 1K. It uses exactly 1K. There is not one spare byte on the EEPROM. He squeezed it right in there. It's amazing. So at the interview, as you saw there was the Dream 68 in the background there. We asked him if it worked. It didn't. It was a little bit sad. It would have been nice to have that on part of his interview. And he took it away and it was all fine and whatever. I contacted him later on and said, look, if you're interested to make the thing work, come over, I've got soldering iron and stuff, we can make it work. And he went quiet for a few months. He rings me up, he says, yep, let's have a go. I think he had a go at it himself and couldn't make it work. So there's the picture there of him leaning over my workbench there with his prototype sitting there. And all it just turned out to be, well, he had already changed the EEPROM to a 2716 because he thought the code was lost and whatever, but it wasn't. It was just the IC sockets for the RAM. That was all that was wrong, nothing else going on, and it was all good. So at the conclusion of it all, it was all good, it was all working, and he turns to me and says, you can have it. So he gave me the prototype, here it is here, and still working, complete without bottom. and all the original documentation and everything that he did to build it, it's just a fantastic story. I was really embarrassed to take it from him, and he put a lot of effort into it and everything, but he said you should have it. So anyway, so I've got that one. So there's another Dream 6800 that Riley's got on his display there, which I've pimped out. Because there were some interesting programs that came out there. There was, the famous one was Dream Invaders, which was obviously a take on Space Invaders. Written mostly in assembler with a few system calls to ChipOS. Very big program, so I've put that into EEPROM. And there's a socket now that Riley's got. I haven't shown him how it works yet, actually. But you can plug in an EEPROM and just load it up, and it's independent from ChipOS there.
Cartridges.
It's a poor man's cartridge. Yeah, it's a poor man's cartridge. So there was, that was an assembly game, and then there was the ChipOS games, Chip 8 games, which is Wipeout, Tank Battle, UFO Intercept. Yep. Sorry? Well, not that was, well, there might have been, but not published in EA. So I suppose if you're really keen, you could go into the original Byte magazine and look at the Cosmac Chip 8 programs and put them into this, because it's all compatible. I haven't done that. It's too much work. Riley can do that. He's a software engineer, right? So he can do that. Yep. So anyway, there it is. It's that's a quick rundown of the Dream 6800. Come and see me over there, and we can talk more about it if you like, and so on. Yep.
Putting things in context.
Yep.
A 1K chip in those days cost more than a hamburger.
Yes, that's right. In fact, the 2708 EEPROM that he put in there, in the ones that were published, the chip was already obsolete anyway, and it's a difficult EEPROM as well. It needs 3 power rails and difficult to program and all this sort of stuff. But he was pushed for publication date and whatever, so they just shoehorned it through. And bad luck for the constructors, I suppose. But his website documents the approved 2716 update, so there you go. I don't think it gives the code for it though, so you have to check that. Any questions about the Dream 6800? Yep.
You said you were given the documentation.
Yep. Sorry?
Have you made that documentation available anywhere?
Not yet. I've got it with me, if you want to have a leaf through it. It's in a folder. It's all quite well organised. If I wasn't so lazy, I would scan it and whatever. Yep. Yes, Alan's a scan master. Yep. Yep. Yep.
I've got an unfinished Dream 6800 that I ordered at the junk shop somewhere years ago. It'd be nice to get the doco and put together.
Well, his doco won't help you fix it. The EA articles are very good, and I think the third article has got a troubleshooting procedure in there, which is actually very good, because it says you take these chips out, measure for this signal here, here and here. It's actually really helpful stuff. Yeah, but yeah, if you need, you can contact me. You can contact Mike, actually. His website says to contact him. As he phrases it, he's still chuffed that people are interested in it. He's the nicest fella, so have a chat with him. When I first met him, we had just for a coffee for the pre-interview. I mean, I hadn't met him. He didn't know who I was. We ended up talking for like 5 hours. It was just about all this stuff. He's got a couple of patents. He was involved with the original design of, well, like it or not, the smart meter used for measuring your power in your house, because he worked for Nielsen Instruments that did the original design work. He's got a patent on some safety system used in motion control for theatre automation, you know, because I move stage sets in and out. It's all hydraulic controlled and can hurt people if they're in, I'm not sure exactly the finer points, but some safety system. He got a patent on that. And as I showed him, that he's got that keyboard there, he's got that. He's currently working on an EWI, an electronic wind instrument. So looks like a clarinet, and it's all connected via MIDI and all this sort of stuff. So he works on that. So he's still doing stuff. He's a nicest chap. So you can certainly reach out and say hello and whatever. Any other questions? No? I think... So I think, yes, the Tech 1 is next. I don't have a Tech one with me. I thought Riley was going to bring. We'll get to another Tech one. Anyway, the Tech one, talking electronics computer, number one. There was lots of ones, wasn't there? Australia's first computer was originally the Mark I, became CIRAC. I've got an Osborne 1 on display. There's lots of ones. Not many twos that came out. The one was the best one. So the origins of the Tech 1 was John Hardy and Ken Stone were the co-designers. John Hardy had already built a machine called the Onion. That's sort of been lost to time. The Onion was Z80 based. Why was it called the Onion? Because computers of the day were called after some sort of vegetable, something, fruit and whatever, Apple computers, all this sort of thing. Onion. Bit weird, but okay. The machine's been lost. Ken Stone was working at Talking Electronics after school. Ken and John actually lived like a street apart from each other and a couple of streets away from Colin Mitchell's place at 35 Rosewarne Avenue, Cheltenham. So they went to school just around the corner there. So Ken was already there, but they were good friends anyway, and I think at some point they thought, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Talking Electronics was run by Colin Mitchell. Talking Electronics was an interesting magazine. It was really targeted to younger kids rather than the more mature kids that like the EA and ETI and I don't know what else was around at the time, some of the UK magazines. Elector was good. There's a couple other ones. I saw one on the free table. So Talking Electronics, but it was very erratic when it came out. It was just issue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there might be a year between issues, 2 years. It was just all over the shop. It just came out when it came out. And I remember going to the newsagents and, when does it come out and buy it and whatever, $1.70 or something. It was quite cheap for the issues. Pretty good. Had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of simple projects, many of them from Ken. You'll see etched on the board, KS. Colin Mitchell was originally a TV repair guy. I didn't know who he was, but I used to work at a TV spare part shop, and it turned out Colin would turn up from time to time and buy some stuff. And he did ask me, the shop had a board, it wasn't Veriboard, it was, there's a product where you could have an IC on there and all the pads were sort of drawn out and everything. And Colin also had a similar one, and he would ask me why, the UK one was better, and I said because the tracks don't lift, and then he shut up. But then he buys parts for some TV repair. So he was obviously into electronics and more probably in the TV analog world more so than digital stuff. So Ken was probably more in the analog stuff. Actually, Ken has got an interesting backstory too, which I didn't know. He also designed kits for synthesizers, modular synthesizers. You'll see a picture of that later, actually. And that's just fascinating backstory there. So he's got a lot of background in there. So he knew how to design something and then make it into a circuit board and some sort of a product that somebody might want to buy. Colin probably took advantage of that. Well, not took advantage, but, utilised that capability and so on. So in issue 10 of Talking Electronics, we haven't got that far. We're still designing. Okay, so the Tech 1 was designed primarily based on info that John had read out of the 8080 bug book from Radio Shack, even though it's an 8080, but a lot of things are similar. A lot of people complained about it. The first version of the Tech 1 had the 8212 latches for the display, which is a really awkward sort of chip, certainly these days. And that was because of the 8080 bug book. It's in there. There's an example of it in there. They used the Microprocessor 1 as a development platform. They got the full module there. They had the printer and it had an EEPROM burner on the microprocessor, which that was paid for by Colin. Colin gave them a bunch of cash and they went to Spencer Street Radio Parts and bought it. I remember seeing the thing at the time, the microprocessor. It was very, very expensive, many hundreds of dollars in 82, 83 sort of time frame. It was a pretty expensive kit. I've got one. It's not on display, but because I ran out of space. But if you want to have a look at one, I've got one. Of course, it's Z80 based. Hardware keyboard controller or encoder, 74C923. Troublesome chip these days to get. I asked John why. He goes, well, because it need more software to program it. Right, that's all, just do it in hardware. Fair enough. Had 2K of RAM, and the Mon 1, which was 2K, was hand assembled by John. So it would have been a lot of work to write the code for that. A lot of reprogramming on the microprocessor, and gee, that would have been a lot of work to do that. So that's the design background there. So the prototypes, you can see Ken there with the back with his, I don't know how you describe his room, his workshop there. You see all these modular synthesizers in the background there. His entire room, it covers all the windows and everything. Have you been there? No. You haven't been there? Wow, it's a sight to behold. It is incredible. He doesn't play much in the way of the synthesizers anymore. He had not a Tech 1, but some sort of Z80 thing with a MIDI interface which controlled some of this stuff at some point as well. So he's holding one of the very early prototypes where they've hacked off the corner because it didn't fit in the case or something. He's still got that. John's got a later prototype in his hands there. This is it's in the same room but on a different angle there. The floor is about approximately knee-deep in wires, literally. Where you sort of have to wade through to get in there. It is just... Ken's place is amazing. Next time you're in Melbourne, find your way to see Ken. It's just... He's a nice chap. It's good value. So, yeah, the original PCB was laid out by hand, and then I said that the Mon 1 was assembled by hand as well. So in issue 10, the original Tech 1 came out. So the way, basically how you can pick the original is with the 8212 latches, these guys here, the bigger chips.
There's an original of the Tech 1 with those 8212 latches in the Sydney branch of the Australian Computer Museums.
Well, I've got one here as well. I've got my original one that I built in 83. Then they did some changes to latches. I'm not sure about the Tech 1C, I can't remember the details or the D. Ken started a Tech 1E, but never came to fruition. And the F came about. It was another project went in a slightly different direction. I think it was not 100% compatible. Was that right? There was some weirdness about it. Again, I don't know about it, a lot about it. And the Tech 1G, which we have on over there, we've got one there. So there it is there. It's all pimped out with dot matrix displays and all sorts of stuff these days, and backlit keyboard and you name it. Have a chat to Mark there if you want. Oh, it's even battery powered now, so for portable use there. So you can sit on the plane on the way home or something and program that. I'm sure that might raise a few eyebrows. Have a chat with Mark. I think he's got a blank board there. He'll probably sell you. That's a signature edition, isn't it? Yep.
It's a signature
Yep.
edition, and it's actually not actually released. It's a beta.
Oh, okay.
A few little things changed to it.
It's a super secret one. Anyway, have a chat with him. You're basically the lead on all of this, the Tech 1G. You're the one running the whole thing. So it's still going. There's support. If you build it and it doesn't work, hassle him. He'll make it go for you or figure out how to help you make it go. So they're still going. It's amazing. After all these years, they're still going. And there we are at the end, just on time, which is what you're looking for. So
We've got one still.
got more. Oh, okay. Well, thanks for staying.
Sorry, a bit behind time here. We'll just get Ron up here quickly to talk about the ETI 685. And in my defence, I finished the slides at 1 a.m. this morning. So. Thanks, Ron.
Good day, everybody. Your question as to why a particular microprocessor. In my case, I was a trainee technician, and we were building at the mail exchange control systems out of TTL Logic, and every time we finished a control system, they changed their mind as to what they wanted it to do. And so this young engineer discovered the microcontroller, and he figured, hey, if we've got program, we can just change the program. So I bumped into him one day, and he was playing around with it, trying to put words and data into it with a little Vero board. And I asked him what it was, and he says, oh, it's a mini computer. I said, oh, how does that work? And he goes, oh. Anyhow, very shortly after that, the Baby 2650 appeared in the magazine. So I grabbed hold of one of those. So I'd seen it, and that's how I got involved. I built the Baby 2650, and to make it work, you had to build a video terminal with a keyboard. You had to get an old black and white TV off the street, portable little TV, and modify that for the video. And so we got all that running, and we're running off cassette tapes. So, you know, cassette tapes. I looked at trying to expand it because it only has 256 bytes of memory. I thought, oh, I need more than that. So I added a 1K card, which had a whole pile of memory chips on it, and about 100 wires soldered underneath the board. And I figured this is not working terribly well. I did get it working. I had a 5K, 1.25K computer. And I looked at how to expand it. And about that time, everyone was talking about the S100 over in America from the Altair bus. And I thought, well, there's a bus. I can buy the motherboard and put some sockets in it, and I can get hold of some prototype wire wrap boards that were S100 boards, and I could develop it from there. So I went and purchased that gear from overseas and ended up with an S100 build-it-yourself prototyping board. So this has got power and ground tracks on it, but every other wire on it is wire wrapped. Now, I was already familiar with wire wrapping because all the control systems we were building were wire wrapped and digital logic, so it wasn't too onerous to me, and debugged it. It was basically a Baby 2650 with S100 encoding on it so that it would work on the bus. And played around with that idea, and I had already done a video card, and it was published in Electronics Australia. When I came up with the expanded version of this card to add some peripheral bits on it, serial and parallel, I talked to, I think it was Leo Simpson, and he says, oh, nobody would be interested in 2650s anymore. They're all buying Dick Smith's Z80 computers. And I was very disappointed with that scenario. But then on my way home, I thought, well, there's another magazine. I'll talk to Roger Harris. So I rang him up and he says, oh, yeah, really interested. Come over immediately. So we came over and he had put the kettle on. We had a long chat. And he says, oh, I'd love whatever you can do. Obviously, they wanted to fill the pages of the magazines. So I came up with, and I've got the schematic diagrams over there, I came up with an expanded printed circuit board design. And I talked to Owen Hill at Applied Technology. He was already selling the kit for the serial video card. And I mentioned to him about this board. And it's got 50 chips on it. It's quite complex. And he says, oh, I can get the kids to knock up a board on the weekend with red and blue tape. And I'm thinking, you're not going to do that in red and blue tape. And I was now working at AWA, and there was, in the drawing office, and I was often involved with the drawing office, getting schematics drawn up and so forth. I talked to this chap, and I said, can you do this sort of design? No problem at all. So I went and talked to Owen. I said, this chap can lay out our board for us. And he got a quote, and he came back and he says, that's way too expensive. I'm not going to pay for that sort of thing. And anyhow, we managed to get him to consider it because it was quite a complex board. So he talked to Dave, and Dave laid out the board, and we presented it as the magazine article, 685, and Owen Hill sold them as kits. So the original 2650 ran on the cassettes. When we got this system up and running, it was still on cassettes, and then I developed a floppy disk controller for it. There were chaps writing software, first of all on cassette, and this has actually got Microworld Basic on the cassette, and they eventually produced enhanced versions on floppy disk. So we got the floppy disk drive created, actually never wrote it up as a magazine article, and it went into my computer. I ended up with twin disk drives running assemblers, disassemblers, source generators, Forth, Basic, So a word editor, you know, basically complete home computer system, bit by bit built up. The interesting thing at the time when we got the first floppy disk controller card running, Owen had already the first versions of the microbees, but he was being asked in Western Australia in a contract to supply something running CPM, and that would mean floppy disks. So he grabbed one of my S100 floppy disk controllers, made a small interface for the 50-pin connector at the back of the microbee, and the whiz kids who are doing all the software for the microbee put together a CPM system, sent it over to Western Australia, and they won the contract. And so ended up versions of disk operating system and the disk controller, they made their own that sat underneath the disk drive and inside the housing. So that was an interesting little side effect. About 2 years ago, Riley came up to me, actually emailed me on LinkedIn. He says, I think I've got one of your machines. And I'm going, machines? What sort of machine? I sent back a message, I only made this 2650 computer. And he came back and says, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So I've got his old system, no, my old system, from 1978, and we're upgrading it and trying to get it working. This is the motherboard out of it, so it's the original motherboard. It's faulty. There's a short circuit somewhere on the board, and we will get that operating. I had a blank printed circuit board at home for 45 years. Talk about not throwing anything out. And about 4 years ago, I thought, oh, I might as well put it together. And I had a CPU and PipBug, put it together, had it working with cassette. And I thought, well, I then found, talk about not throwing stuff out, I found 2 boxes of floppy disks. And they were data disks, no system disk. I looked through the things, and I figured, well, if I'm going to use these, I'm going to need disk drives, I'm going to need a disk controller, which I don't have. So I bought disk drives off eBay from a guy in Canada, and I started cleaning them up and built a little calibrator so I could calibrate and verify they were working correctly. And then when Riley came along with my old system, I could get hold of the ROMs because I didn't have the software ROMs. So I've got the ROM for the disk controller and the ROM for the SPC card, which was a modified version. Then I needed a disk controller. I had all the schematic diagrams, all the design information, so I pulled up my old PC, running on my PC, ran Altium, captured the schematic diagram, laid out a printed circuit board, which is where we are these days, and made it a 4-layer board, sent it over to China. 4 weeks later, I had half a dozen boards, put it together. Because I had internal power and ground, I had less tracks on the board and I had a lot of free space. And I thought I might as well put memory on that board as well so I don't have to have a separate memory card. And I put a 32K memory card. Now the 2650 only talks to 32K, so a single 32K chip with a couple of bus drivers running off memread and memwrite, and on that one card. I got that up and running, and I got annoyed with the fact that every time I loaded software and turned the thing off at night, it was gone. So back onto Google and dug up a non-volatile 32K RAM and stuck it in there, and I can turn it off and come back the next day, turn it back on as exactly where it was. So that's where we are at present. I'm basically building a second system and trying to recover software. So the original software was on cassettes, and a lot of those were affected by fungus. They were white on the top and some were green. The little felt pads that the head goes against had all fallen off. So I had to undo them, pull the little spring thing out, scrape away the old glue, put a dot of super glue and put the pads back on. Some of the tapes, the anti-slip film that they have between the reels of tape were buggered. So I ended up buying buying from China cassette tapes and swapping the bodies over. So taking the roll of tape out and putting it into the new bodies, to get them working, and modified the cassette interface, 300 bits per second cassette, to add a glitch catcher, because the rubbish was so affected that the transitions between the two tones at 300 bits per second had a lot of noise, and I got a lot of faulty loads. So we got all that. I've recovered just about all the software off the cassettes, and now we're working on the floppy disk. The floppy disk, same problem, all covered in fungus. The first time I started playing with it, it came with a system disk. I put the system disk in, typed dir, got a directory. Oh, fantastic. Then I grabbed one of the data disks and I started looking at what was on the data disk, and that data disk was contaminating the read head on the drive, which I didn't know. Put the system disk back in, and all accesses on the system disk are to track 0 to find the start of any application that's on that. Ultimately, it ripped off track 0 and that disk is dead. So I've got one other old disk that I've got from another chap that I'm tentatively getting ready to try and duplicate. I bought brand new floppy disk from America. A pack of 10 was, with transport, over $100. I bought a couple of packs of name brand cassettes, because the cheap Chinese ones, the oxides on them are so noisy that if you record something on there and play it back, it's hardly visible. The tones on, they would have been for dictaphone levels of operation, but certainly don't like running at 2,400 kilobits per second, 2.4K, which is the one of the two tones on a 300 bits per second. So that's basically where we are. I've basically built a separate system, and I've got Riley's old system, and I've got about 100 floppy disks from 3 different people to try and figure out how to get the software off, and then we'll make it available to people. There you go.
We have gone over time, but until someone kicks us out, then we could do questions, yeah?
Can I add something? I'm supposing I have spoken to you about detrimental cyclohexidroxane. It's a really interesting chemical called, a trade name is cyclomethicone, and I've been depackaging floppy disks, washing them with surgical paper, and then re-lubricating them, and they don't do that delamination thing anymore. Yeah. So cyclomethicone, for anyone that's concerned about the scary name, it's the base chemical used to make cosmetics. Oh, right. And it's basically silicon ring, really slippery. And I've done a video, done a whole bunch of tests, and because I don't have a Google account, I can't put it on YouTube, so I'm going to talk to ACMS about it going onto their site if they want. And I got a small vial of it if you want to try it.
So there's a 3D printed gizmo that you pop your floppy disk in, and it's got the knob at the middle that allows you to turn the disk around. And so you turn it around with one hand, and on the other hand you try and wipe in the little window the medium as it's going past with isopropyl alcohol and try and clean it. Tried that, fungus won't let go.
Fungus doesn't seem to be as much of a problem once you've re-lubricated.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when the head's sliding over the material, fungus causes
Yep.
it to shudder.
Yeah.
And the shuddering modulates the signal.
And it scrapes bits off and it sticks on the head,
So,
yeah.
so if it doesn't delaminate because you've lubricated it and it doesn't shudder,
Mm-hmm.
the results are astounding. I have a North Star Horizon with the hard sector floppies, which means they're almost impossible to get. And I've had shuddering by some people call it bulldozering, and I've taken them out of the package, cleaned them, lubricated them, put them back in, drive deep, and pull the files off without any trouble.
Yeah, well, that'd be terrific. Yeah, well, that's the sort of thing I'm looking for in coming here. You know, I'd looked on the internet, people were saying cut 3 sides out of the disc, pull what they call the donut out, put it into a tray, a glass tray, and clean it. Get a brand new floppy disk, which hasn't got contamination on the internal lining, the white lining, and cut that open and put the disks in there and read the data off. And I have not quite got to doing that, but that was one of the research areas I'd picked up.
The reason for using this product is that I found that one of the like National Archives version over in Europe were treating their magnetic tapes to stop them squealing using this very same product. And I went, well, let's try it on floppy disks.
All right, yep. Yeah, I remember my Philips reel-to-reel would squeal quite often, and I'd try cleaning the heads and...
There's the loss of the lubricant in the tape that's squealing on the dirty head.
All right.
So I've actually got a little cotton bud with
Mm.
the cyclomethicone on my tape reel-to-reel,
Yeah.
relubricating magnetic tapes.
All right, yeah, well, I feel like I'm part of the National Film Archive right now, trying to recover off electronic media. Yep.
We'll talk more.
Well, if we're not putting more floppies, National Computer Museum in England has got heaps of floppies brand new.
Yeah, I bought some second-hand ones, but they're all in the same...
I've got a couple of boxes of 8-inch floppies from the neighbourhood. Brand new, still vacuum sealed.
Yeah, well, in the long term, and the idea is to get them off the floppy disks and into onto thumb drives and use that adapter that replicates a floppy disk drive. And
I'm restoring a whole bunch of 8-inch CPM discs at the moment to a new CPM 8-inch disc.
yeah. Was it a GoTech? I bought one of those GoTechs, and I'm hoping that the existing DOS will see it as looking like a Shugart 400, which is basically how it's running.
Thanks, everyone. We've got to get back to the... Cool. Thank you, Ron, by the way. That's amazing. Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Check, check. That one works. Check, check, check. There we go.
Test, test. 2, 2, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Test, test, test. I probably won't hold it too close. I don't like to listen to my own voice too much. All right, it's 2 o'clock. I suppose we can start. So thank you for turning up to my talk. So my talk, I've forgotten. What is the title of my talk? What am I actually talking about? Does anybody know? Was it, sorry? Neo-Ludditism. What is Neo-Ludditism? This is going to be interactive, so I'm going to expect people to like shout out things. You're not going to get away with just sitting passively. Was that, sorry? Depends who you ask. That's right. I mean, you know, maybe the Luddites are maybe very misunderstood, right? You know, were they sort of were the Luddites one of the first labour unions, you know, fighting back against bad bosses? Did they just not like technology? Do they not like new things? So I don't know. Different opinions on this, but anyway, I thought Neo-Luddism, I got much of a... spent so little time on my slides that I haven't even put my talk title on my slides, so... and you know, in reality, that's all I'm going to talk about. So this is the end of the presentation. Thank you for coming. So, no, my presentation actually, I'm going to start. I like doing presentations with lots of photos because people don't like, you know, bullet points on slides and you're going and reading them and they're very boring and you're like, why am I reading the bullet points that are just saying the same thing that on the slide that you're already telling me? Death by PowerPoint. So I like having lots of photos. So I do my presentations, I fill them up full of photos. I think the problem is I want to talk about some of the technology that I used as a kid, but some of that, and sorry for my voice as well too, I've had a cold and I've still got bronchitis, but I'll try my best. Some of the technology that I used as a kid, I didn't take photographs of all of this stuff. You know, some of it we just used it and we didn't think about it at the time, but now we're kind of interested in remembering it. So I am going to admit that my presentation is mostly created out of stolen photos, photos that I've basically pinched from other people. Let me see if I can get my notes up here as well. So I've got a lot of stolen photos. I'm sorry. I apologise to the people whose photos I'm taking and using without attribution, but it is fair use under Australian copyright law for criticism, for comment, for education, educational purposes only. Yeah, that's right. This is retro, isn't it? Yeah? You wouldn't steal a movie. Oh dear. Well, you know, this being Canberra and everything, those people who have security clearances, don't put your hand up, don't put your hand up. But no, you're definitely not allowed to watch pirated movies, are you? That's a big no-no. Offside, that's right. Or at least if you do watch pirated movies, don't tell your security vetting officer about it. So yeah, anyway, I'll work through some of the photos. So what are we looking at? I'm thinking back into my childhood. I'm thinking, what were the things that I had as a kid? You know, I can remember technology coming into my household, right? You'd get this new thing, and you get that new thing, and then you get another new thing, and it's like, what were the things that I can really remember? And I'll see whether you guys can guess what some of these images are. Let's just sort of jump through them. What about, what's this? A what? VCR? Oh, well, I suppose actually the room, we're probably all old enough to remember these, right? Some people probably wouldn't remember what they are anymore. You remember Betamax? Yeah. What was the digital format? There was like High 8 or something, wasn't there, right? Because I remember a fellow who had a whole bunch of tapes on that. Yeah, VHS. So this was probably one of the first things. I remember having, you know, the CRT television. You only had, it was probably like 4 channels or something. Maybe it was 3 channels where I was living. And so having a VHS player is like, wow, I can watch movies whenever I want, you know, and I can get the tape and I can put it in and it's like, oh, this is so cool. What about this next one? I'm not going to be purely kind of restricting myself to computers, even though it's the Vintage Computer Expo. Microwave, that's right. Yeah. So, that was cool. It was like, okay, we can heat up food more quickly now and we don't have to put things on the stove for hours. Had analog dials, that's right. Yeah, I think mine looked a little bit like that, I think. Again, these photos are not exactly the same things that I had, but they're very close. Found photos that are pretty close to what I had. What about that? What, a computer? Commodore 64? Has anybody read Bill Hurd's book where he talks about designing the Commodore 128? Has anyone read that book? And he's making a joke about while they were building that machine, they were having all these problems with chips, and the chips would overheat and they would burn out. And he said that sometimes the chips would last days, not weeks, as was the usual Commodore quality standard. And that's 100% true. That's one of these jokes that's funny because it's true. Because Commodores. So I didn't actually get a Commodore 64 as my first computer because my dad bought one. The power supply failed, so he took it back to the shop and they gave him a new power supply. And that one failed as well. And then he said, I don't think I want a third one. I'm not going to have another one, please. I just want my money back. So I did not get a Commodore 64 as my first computer, although it could very nearly have been. And then our house was without a computer for some number of years. And then eventually, well, that's my son sitting in front of that one. That's not me, but it's a 386. So that was my first computer, 386DX. So, and that case is original, the keyboard's original, the monitor's not original. Some parts have been changed, but yeah, that was, and that was like really cool because you go to the library and you could get these Usborne books. Did anyone read Usborne books? With the little friendly robots who are teaching you how to program. And those were fantastic. And you could put in BASIC because we had GW BASIC, which was Bill Gates' version of BASIC. You could do GW BASIC under MS-DOS on a 386. So that was cool. What was the next thing that came into my house? Fax machine, that's right. Good old fax machine. And we had like thermal fax, we'd get that special roll of thermal paper and you'd put it in there. And it had a cutter, but the thing is, a thermal paper, it's like receipt paper. It comes out of the machine, it's all floppy. And then it did have a cutter where you had a cutting bar would go across it and chop it. But then the pages would stack up, but they'd then all just sort of flop everywhere. And you wouldn't be able to send or receive very big faxes with it. It wasn't really good, but it did work. So I remember that, and that was cool. And it was like, you could photocopy things on the fax machine, although the copies were really bad because they'd come out on thermal paper. Sort of like if you sort of had a friend at school and you're like, I forgot the homework sheet, can you please fax it through to me? I mean, nobody ever did that because of the fact that you don't want to do your homework anyway. But so fax machine, that was the next thing. Now we're going to move on to some trickier items. What's this thing? Again, this is not the exact same thing, but it's pretty close. No. Set-top box? What kind of set-top box? Cable set-top box? Yes. What era would this be? What cable system? Yeah, Foxtel. Anyone have Foxtel? So if you're living in Sydney at the time, which I was, this is around about 1995, and they started rolling out all this coaxial cable on all the power poles. And then you could get an analogue, they were analogue back in the day. It used an encrypted video signal, but these boxes would descramble the analogue video signal into another analogue signal, which would go to your television. And this was amazing because all of a sudden you go from 4 channels or 5 channels, and you've got like 20 channels or 30 channels. And you could watch Nickelodeon, and back in the day with Foxtel, it was illegal for them to run ads on Foxtel. They were legally not allowed to have advertisements. So you could watch Nickelodeon all day long with no ads. Never any, there were commercial breaks, but then they had to have funny things in the commercial breaks, yeah?
I was going to say, the Optus one that was around, the Optus had a really weak version of that video stuff.
Yeah.
You use a TV tuner, put a TV tuner in the computer, put the signal in, run a very small program and do that descrambling, all channels for nothing.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So you could descramble the analog encryption on Optus Vision, you're saying, yes. And in fact, you could do the same thing with Foxtel. They use NewsCrypt, which was a version of VideoCrypt, which you see on the front of the box. Now, NewsCrypt is harder, but you could still do it. you had a Pentium class machine and you had a TV tuner card and you had the right connections, you could run your cable television there and you could descramble on the fly and you could watch the pay-per-view boxing, or you could watch all the channels you weren't supposed to watch, which of course I never did. Note to my security, I don't have a security clearance, but if I want one in the future, maybe I should not admit to doing anything illegal. So that's right, fun while it lasted. They eventually got rid of that because they went to digital video encryption and you couldn't do that anymore. But that was interesting. Now, this next photo, these photos are all stock photos from the internet. This next one is of me. This is not a stock photo. Or not. So, a dishwasher, you know? Like, again, we're not doing just purely computers here. It's like this was really things that made our lives better, right? Because me and my brother, well, usually Mum would cook the dinner, unless somebody else did, but she would cook the dinner, and then myself and my brother, we'd wash up. You know, and washing up at that time is like you get your sink full of soapy water and you do all the dishes one by one, and one person would wash them in the water and the other person would dry them, and we do that, do that every single night. And it's like, kids these days probably don't know what that's like, so you just use the dishwasher all the time, but it's, wow, like the idea that you can, more labour-saving devices for the house, this is technology making our lives better, making everything easier. This is actually sort of 1987 era. Does anyone know what this is? An Amstrad, that's right, like luggable computer. They call it a luggable. So, and I actually didn't have one of these back in the day, but sometime in the sort of mid-90s, somebody gave me one that they didn't want. And this was kind of my first introduction to, I don't know whether you could call it retro computing, because it was probably about 1995, and I think these are circa 1987. And doesn't it have to be more than 20 years old to be a retro computer?
Just obsolete.
Just obsolete? This is definitely obsolete at the time, because you're talking low-density 3.5-inch floppy disks, which is just the worst stuff.
That's advanced over, father had what's called CAPRO, PPCE, personal portable computer.
Yeah.
Cathode ray key with a keyboard on the front and a 5.25 drive.
5.25 drive, that's right. The actual, the Osborne luggables, I think there is one in there on display. I just think the design of those is just terrible. They don't look very good, do they?
It's actually more portable than PPCE.
If you haven't seen it, a good movie I keep recommending is Silicon Cowboys, which is about the rise of compact computer in Texas in the US. And they actually put thought into the design of their computer to make it nice. So this is something that I'm going to talk later. I'm going to mention later in the presentation. Maybe I won't. I'll talk about that when we get to it. I won't spoil that yet. But what's this? What kind of modem?
That's
33.6. 33.6. Did anyone have one of these?
I have.
Yes?
I have that exact same form factor, but I have a cable.
Isn't that cool? These were built in Australia, I think. These Australian modem, yeah?
I had an IT company that we were servicing electronics.
Yeah, right.
About 10,000 of those.
Right. Were they bad? Did they break a lot?
Well, it's, like there'd be a storm or something.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So they outsource all their servicing.
Yeah, mine never broke down, but I do remember all those warnings about if you're making a phone call, don't hold the phone during a lightning storm with your feet on a concrete floor. Do you remember that? Yeah. So modem, there's 33.6K modem. Actually, this is not the first modem that I had, because the first modem I had was built into the luggable computer that I showed you before, which was a 2400 baud modem. And I connected to the first BBS, bulletin board system, that I ever connected to. I dialed up long distance to America because I didn't know any phone numbers for BBSs in Australia, but someone later gave me a big printed list of phone numbers. But this was 14400. And this was in the day where you didn't know anything unless somebody told it to you or you read it in a book. So you didn't have the World Wide Web to look these things up. What about this? Yeah, Debian 2.2. Potato was the code name. So that was, I think actually the first Linux that I used was Red Hat, but then I actually started to use Debian pretty quickly. So, and I liked Debian Potato.
I'm fond of old Slackware 1.
Yeah, Slackware.
I had it loaded, but I was too scared to actually use it, so I just turned it off.
I apologise to the non-Linux people in the room who are like, what is everybody talking about? And all of the Linux people who are getting angry at me because they like a different distro and don't like mine. But that's...
No, I'm a Debian person now, but I started with Slackware because I was frustrated with Trumpet Winsock on Windows.
I tell the story sometimes. I hung out for a day with Richard Stallman. Anyone who Richard Stallman is? This is sort of, free software royalty, and he was very upset that I was using Debian. I told him I was using Debian. He was angry. He was cross because he said, it comes with non-free firmware. That comes with proprietary things. Everything has to be open and free. He was very angry with me. But... Yeah. I remember Stallman doesn't carry a mobile phone around because they run proprietary software, so you can't use that. Well, I mean, the Android phones are Linux-based, but they've got binary blobs in them that you can't see, so that's not allowed. But I remember he borrowed my phone to make a phone call at some point, and I thought, I'm definitely being tracked by the CIA now. There's no way I'm not. I'm on some watch list. Yeah, it is. Who knows what this is? I'm going to be very impressed if someone can tell me what this is. Yes, a DOCSIS modem, that's right, because we had the Foxtel cable, the coaxial cable, which sort of run on the sort of outside of the house. This is the first broadband. So you could actually, this thing, it ran at like 10 megabits per second downstream. And in an age of modems, we had 56.6K or 33.6K. This was incredible. This was like, wow. The only problem is, I think that there was some rule. You could only download something like 100 or 200 megabytes a month. That was your download limit. So it's like a Ferrari that goes really, really fast, but you can only drive at 20 meters and you have to stop. That sucked. Everybody can remember how bad bandwidth limits were back in the day. What's this? Yeah, compact laptop. So this was, I got one second hand and took it to school with me and used it at school. And I was like, well, nobody had a computer at school, a laptop computer at school. So only a few people did at the time. This was like late 90s, early 2000s. That was my laptop. I really liked that thing. What about this? Yeah? Has anybody seen one of these before? Yeah? I got mine second hand and I don't even know who gave it to me. I just suddenly had one. Maybe one of my friends said, oh, do you want to have this piece of rubbish? And I said, sure, I don't have a phone. Yeah. So, you could go down to the Vodafone store and you could get signed up on a no plans. Anybody remembers what the no plans were? And then you could have, like, wow, I can send text messages, I can make phone calls. This is kind of really cool. Again, did this stuff make our lives better? Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was cool. It was fun. You're excited about it. It let you do new things. You could call people. You could text. You could...
An interesting thing in terms of mobile usage is that when mobile phones were introduced in the US, you were actually billed for receiving text.
Yeah, that's right. So in the...
I remember actually on internet forums that when they stopped that, or briefly in some places stopped that, people were then talking about all these young people having RSI in their thumbs from excessive texting. And I thought, funny that, we never had that problem. Well, we did sort of, but we didn't have issues of being billed for texting. But they had this whole thing of increasing usage of texting in phones year 2000.
I think most people pay nothing for texting these days, right? Because you do it through iMessage or something. In the US, you'd pay to receive as well as to send. Yeah, that was bad. So what about that? This should be pretty easy. DVD player. That was really, does anybody remember? It's like you had VHS and you had to rewind it, you had to fast forward it, and then the quality was really terrible, and then sometimes it would eat the tape, and it's like DVD, wow. No.
There was actually a game, an interactive game that was relied on being a VCR.
Yeah. I do remember VCR games, actually, because I remember playing one of those with my friends. That was cool. What about, who had one of these? Yes? Your cousin had one? Yeah? Yeah, the black and white one. I bought one of the fancy coloured ones. This is early 2000s now. So you had the touch screen and you'd use the little pen and you could write on there and you had your apps. It was like cool. This was, before the smartphone, before the iPhone, but like, wow. I thought that was pretty cool. You could listen to music because you could put MP3s in on an SD card. I mean, of course, MP3s of, free public domain music, not anything that you would download, of course. But you could use it as an MP3 player. You could take notes. It had, I think I had the T and then eventually the T3, and it had voice memo. I even actually got a thing you could attach to the T3 where it was a Wi-Fi case that wrapped around it, and you could connect it to Wi-Fi and you could do internet with it. And I was like, wow, back in the day. I got one of these, again, second-hand. I think my grandfather gave me his that he didn't want anymore. He said, do you want this piece of rubbish? And I said, sure.
And now they've come back again.
It's come back again, that's right. But you could do mobile data with these. You could do mobile data. And it was probably about 20 kilobits per second or something. It was like bad modem speed. It could go faster than a 56K modem in ideal conditions, but it was... No, not circuit switched. It was the GPRS. It was the next step up from circuit switched. That's right. I don't think I ever used WAP on this phone, but I think it supported WAP. But yeah, it could do GPRS data, and I could connect it. I could tether it to my Palm Pilot or my laptop, so you could actually get internet on the go. And we're getting up to maybe about 2004, 2005, 2006 era here. So. That was really cool. And so we're getting up to the early 2000s. It's like technology. Everything's getting better. Life is getting better. It's fun. I'm excited about getting all these things, yeah? And then it was like, okay, I mean, I could go on, but we're getting out of retro computing territory here now. We're getting into the 2000s and we're getting into the 10s. But I mean, like, what do we have these days to get excited about? What do people get excited about now? What do people get excited about? Are you excited? Bitcoin. Come on. We're not getting any reaction out of the audience. This is terrible. No? No? Apple Vision Pro. Come on, no. Nobody wants an Apple Vision Pro? The metaverse. It's the metaverse. You can live a virtual digital life and walk around as an avatar, and you can go to a meeting and you can have your hands float around your head in a weird way, and you can not have any legs. Doesn't anyone want that? That was Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse. They couldn't do legs to begin with, so everyone was legless. But I don't know, like, the Apple Vision Pro is discontinued. They're going to bring out some new version, I think, but the actual original, the OG Apple Vision Pro, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's been discontinued. The metaverse, it really bombed. Like, I don't really know people who... There wasn't a huge rush. I mean, there are people who use it, no doubt, but there wasn't this huge rush of people into the metaverse. We're not all having metaverse meetings and we're walking around with our avatars in virtual reality and all wearing AI goggles, AI-powered VR goggles all the time. Crypto, it has succeeded in a fashion, but it never became mainstream in the way that was hoped, I guess the idea was we're all going around, we're paying for our groceries with Bitcoin, we're paying for buying movie tickets with Bitcoin, we're transferring money to each other with Bitcoin. I mean, in reality, it's probably known these days more for its kind of scamminess than it is for its kind of utility. But it does have utility. Like, I'm not a Bitcoin bear, but it hasn't lived up to the promise. It didn't do everything that we were promised. So, but why are we not excited about these things? Isn't the future technology supposed to be always exciting? Things are always supposed to be getting better. Aren't you excited? Why aren't you excited? Come on. This is really interesting. I mean, and this is sort of the mindset too in tech of that we should always want the newest thing. We should always want the latest and greatest. And that every new technology always replaces every old technology. Did anybody watch this the other day? Did nobody watch Wimbledon? No one likes tennis. Oh, tough crowd. Oh, I'm not a big tennis fan. I'm not a big tennis fan myself, but I mean, I did watch it. I watched the men's final. Maybe that just shows that I stay up too late.
I know the women's final was over in about 45 minutes.
Yeah. Well, the men's final only went to 4 sets, so But what do you notice in this picture? What do you not notice? What was not at Wimbledon? What did not happen this year? Something was removed.
Don't tell me they've got rid of the analogue clock.
No, not the analogue clock. Something analogue was removed. What was it? It was replaced with digital. Was it, sorry? The ball boys. There's ball girls as well, ball people. I mean, no, you still need people to throw balls. We don't have robots to do that yet, but maybe SoftBank is working on a new startup that might do that. But no, there were no people doing line calls, no line judges. You know those people who stand with their legs apart like that and they yell, out! They don't have them anymore. They got rid of them. They've got technology doing the line calls. And actually the technology, they have pre-recorded voices of people screaming out. And that's just played through speakers. So no more line judges. They've still got a chair umpire, but they've got no more line judges. They got rid of them. I mean, isn't this interesting? In Wimbledon, everyone has to wear white because it's so conservative. And it's all about sort of, you know, the sort of history of the event and sort of we've got to be very reverent about that. But when it comes to the line judges, we get rid of them and we replace them with technology. That's interesting, isn't it? You know, sort of... It is cheaper. Is it better? I don't know. Maybe the... Yeah?
There was the last couple of years when it's been on, there's been incidents where a ball has hit the line's person on purpose.
Yeah, right.
Instead of playing his crap and hit it, back down. Same with ball kicks, but it's also reluctant.
Yeah.
There was one that was into years, so not last year, before, so it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the I guess when the players get angry and they start smashing up their rackets, and they probably would lob a ball toward the umpire, wouldn't they? Yeah. So, I mean, but you know, so again, like, it's very interesting. We've got it's conservative on the one hand. You're not allowed to wear anything but white, but yet tech is going to basically, because that's what tech does, right? Tech makes everything better, and it replaces all old things with new things, and the new things are always better, and you should be so excited about the new things. You know, everything old is stupid. It needs to be erased immediately and replaced. Yeah? Look at this stuff. Ew, yuck, ugh. You know, I was born in 1984. Has anybody read 1984, the book, George Orwell? A lot of people have read that. You know the 2 minutes of hate, where you had to sort of, you looked at Goldstein, the enemy on the screen, the bad guy, and everybody had to scream at Goldstein, we hate you so much, and you're terrible, and you're fighting the party. Ugh, we need to have a 2 minutes of hate for this. It's terrible. Ugh, yeah. Pen and paper, ink, disgusting, film. Just use your smartphone camera. Records, we've got digital to do this now. Yeah, the cheap record players are bad. You've got 2 minutes of hate for the cheap record player. But records, ew, yuck. I mean, come on, you've got all of these digital formats now that have got, you know, amazing fidelity. They sound so much better than vinyl. Why would you want vinyl? Why would you want to use film? You've got to expose it, you've got to pay to have it developed, and you can't use your smartphone. Why do we want a Commodore 64? Go and buy whatever the latest Microsoft PC is with AI Copilot or whatever. Yuck. Ugh. No. I mean, but this is the sort of mentality, right? Like, tech is giving us all of these new, amazing, incredible things. We've got to get excited about them. We've got to throw away all of the old things, and we've got to buy new things all the time, because everything old is rendered silly, it's rendered obsolete, it's rendered stupid, and in fact, you better not be seen using it, because people might think that you're obsolete and out of date as well, and that you're stupid for using it. You better watch out. What will people be thinking about you? It's dangerous. So this almost reminds me, the way that tech is shaping our lives. We're always bringing out new things. You've got to use the new thing, always move to the new thing.
So I guess no electricity because it's not even century discovery.
That's right. Has anybody seen this? What's this?
That's manifest destiny.
Manifest destiny. Yeah? Maybe you can explain it. I'll pass the mic over.
Manifest destiny was this idea the Yanks got in their head about how they should be mean to all the Indians and go across and steal all the land, as opposed to like the other way of doing things?
That's right. So it's who's the woman? The woman is Columbia. Columbia is the personification of America, the United States of America. And what's Columbia doing? She's moving from east to west. She's colonizing America, and she's bringing behind her, we've got trains, yeah? We've got railways, and she's bringing telegraph wire, yeah? To run the overland telegraph from one side of the United States to the other. And you've got these pioneers, and you've got people in wagons. Isn't this fantastic? And what's happening over here? All of the sort of Indians and the savage people are being forced out, right? Or alternatively, if they're not being displaced, Columbia is carrying a school book, you see? So she's going to educate them. No, it actually says, if you look really closely, I think it says school book. So, I mean, aren't we doing the same thing now? You look at this and you go, oh, this is just, gee, it's repulsive. Who are these people? Who are these people hugging? These two fellows there, who are they? You don't know? If you don't know who they are, you should know. You need to find out, yeah? Because they're writing your future. They're going to change the way that you live your life. Does anybody know who they are? No? Yeah, you better move over. You can't see their faces. Sam Altman from OpenAI, yeah, the guy behind ChatGPT. And who's the other fellow? You can't see him. He's got a bald head, almost bald. Johnny. The man in technology circles who only needs to go by his first name, because saying Johnny is enough for people to know who he is. Johnny Ive. Anyone know who Johnny Ive is? The Apple designer? Designed the iPhone? Yes? Yeah, so what are Johnny Ives and Sam Altman working on now? Some new product, which we're not privy to, but I think that, Sam Altman, OpenAI has acquired Johnny Ive's hardware startup for $6.5 billion US, I think. And they're going to work together on... Yeah, not bad considering considering the startup was working on ideas more than actual products. But what are they doing? They're coming up with some new AI gadget. We don't know what it's going to be. Did anybody see last year at Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, the two big AI products were the AI Pin and the Rabbit R1? Did anybody see those? Yeah. The Rabbit, yeah?
It's just an Android shower, isn't it?
Yes, Android running it's Android-based but running AI software. So these are these devices which you're supposed to carry around with you everywhere, and they let you interact with AI. So you're out and about and you sort of go, well, you know, what's the cube root of 17? And then the AI just answers, you know, what should I buy today? Should I buy margarine or butter? Which one's better for my health, you know? How do I improve my workout routine? Please book me a flight to Greece. So we don't know what they're working on at the moment, but it's supposedly going to be this great new AI companion. It's going to be with you all the time. It's going to make your life so much better. It's going to be revolutionary. I think the thing about tech is we've got to the point where if you go to entrepreneur school and you want to learn how do I create the next new big thing that's going to make me a billionaire, and they'll say, well, you've got to find a painful problem that the customer has, and then you've got to solve that problem using some amazing new piece of technology. But that's not really how it works in the big leagues, right? It's a little bit like if somebody says, I want to be like Shaquille O'Neal. And you say, well, you just got to practice shooting a lot of hoops. Because if you just practice with the basketball enough, you'll get into the big leagues. It's not how it works. It's not how the game works. You're talking about this sort of upper echelons of technology. It's pouring huge amounts of capital, huge amounts of money into things. And you can reshape markets. You can actually you tell people what they want. We're not asking you what you want, we're telling you what you want. And what you want is what we're making. Yeah? Yeah.
Think about AI. When you do any sort of any Google search or anything, AI comes up first. And normally, you know, in respected academic circles, if you do research, then you always have to reference where you've taken your information from. AI does not seem to be doing that.
Sometimes they have the links, Mum,
Do
to
they?
websites,
Yeah.
but sometimes they can give like really bad results, like
That's been doing that for years. Technology Connections
Yeah.
did an episode on touch lamps, and Google has decided they want to sell answers and not links to websites.
Uh-huh.
And so it says the touch lamp was invented in 1984, but it wasn't.
Mhm.
And he went on a bit of a rant.
That's right, because
AI just makes it so much worse.
AI is a very impressive magic trick. But the thing is, we don't show you how the trick is done, which is rude, I think. Most magicians, if they do a trick, they show you how the trick's done and you can see that it's a trick. We're trying to trick you by convincing you that the trick is real. With AI, there's a new book that's come out recently, Emily Bender. She wrote a book called, and Alex Hanna. The book is The AI Con, which talks about this. Emily Bender is a professor of computational linguistics. It's the idea that we're manipulating the forms of language, we're manipulating the words, we're putting them in different orders, we're stochastically sort of, kind of extruding text, we're putting out text that looks credible. There's no mind behind that text, there's no understanding behind it. And so it is a magic trick, but we're not telling you that it's a trick, we're making you believe that it's some kind of sentient AI god. It's not really. But I sort of think, well, why... What I would ask is why things are meant to be getting better all the time. We've got better computers, we've got faster computers, we've got AI. What are we doing with any of this stuff? Is it making our lives better? Are we using it to make our lives better? Or are we just building more and more stuff for the point of building it? Are we just making computers go faster, more memory, more capability? What are we actually doing with this? When you think about it, and I'm open to argument here, when you think about the amount of computing power that you need to do a particular job. In the 1980s, we had enough computing power that you could do word processing pretty well, couldn't you? I mean, if you had an 8086 machine and like a Hercules monitor, like high resolution black and white, you could do word processing on that pretty well. Like, you don't need a Pentium 4 or a sort of, Core 7 whatever to do word processing, right? Like, we many, many decades ago reached the point where we had enough processing power to do that. I mean, web browsing, okay, if you want to do just images and video, late 1990s, if you've got a Pentium laptop, first gen Pentium 1 maybe, super VGA graphics, you probably want 800 by 600 resolution. You don't need 50 cores to be able to just do web browsing that's just text and still images. You need a bit more processing power to do decent video. Does anybody want to comment about these figures? Anyone want to render their own opinion? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, the Bill Gates 640K RAM quote, that's right. I mean, so you could do decent video back in the kind of mid-aughts, right? If you had like a Pentium 4 and a...
That did make a huge difference that I personally enjoyed and experienced was, you mentioned before that your computer there was a 386.
Yeah.
But the next generation, the 486 with the math co-processor, that made huge leaps and bounds in terms of...
Yes, the 486 with the maths co-processor was faster. But I mean, I think, do we need computers to get faster and bigger and stronger and better and more memory and more cores and more graphics and more pixels? No?
That was more a case of being able to partition tasks.
Yeah.
If you're actively looking for people with sort of ideas of this, the video is the one interesting one because it is so interesting about that video one is the trade-off, right? Like, yes, you can have decent, if you want to define decent as like HD, like traditional HD, not 4K or anything like that, video, you can have in roughly, the 2000s era. But being able to do full HD video at a speed that you can move over and also the compression to move it over a network, especially based on the networks we had at the time, you may want to go a little newer, or you need to trade off a lower tech computer for a higher tech network. You could set the benchmark for video a little bit later than that, but certainly, we're past that. And the other thing about video is storage, right? Every time I wonder what people do with these massive quantities of storage they build storage servers for, when the answer's not pirated media, it's everyone who... It's either pirated media or it's people who make video, people who do video projects and just eats up storage like nothing else.
Well, does anyone remember the SETI project?
I was bragging to my brother. I said, I went out and I bought some hard drives recently. This was about 10 years ago. I said, I got 12 terabytes. And he said, you need to be immediately arrested. He said, there's no legal reason why you would need that much storage. I said, oh, I'm not going to put anything on it. I just bought it because I like having it around. Of course I don't pirate anything.
Yeah, the SETI was an interesting one because
Yeah, SETI.
that was Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It was a distributed processing coordinator from NASA where you could download a bit of software to run calculations.
Yeah.
And of course, part of the argument was because of all this idle computing CPU.
Yeah.
Home computers.
I think, isn't it interesting though? I think that the tech industry more has an interest in trying to convince you that you need faster and you need better, faster all the time, more memory, more CPU, more disk, more. I mean, we don't really care that you're just sort of like, just want to go and browse the internet and look at some static web pages, or I want to do a bit of word processing. It's like, no, you need the latest $3,000, $5,000 computer for that. You need it.
You do if you want to use Google Chrome.
Yeah, if you use Google Chrome, that's right. I mean, but the thing is, what's driving technology forward now? It's like gaming was driving capability forward, right? And that we wanted to have better graphics. But even with gaming, right, we're like reaching the point where now people are playing like retro gaming is becoming popular, like games with a sort of more low-res aesthetic. You don't need the same kind of hardware to make these games go. So is it going to be AI? And this is what we're saying now. Like you have to go and buy a new laptop, which is Microsoft with a Copilot AI co-processor. You need a new laptop to get an AI co-processor because you're going to want to do AI on your laptop. And the only way to do that is to get a shiny new thing with a new chip that will let you do that. Well, maybe. I mean, I sort of think, is the world getting better with more technology, though? What are we doing with this technology? Does tech make things better all the time? What's this graph? Did I have the fellow here I was talking to before about cybersecurity? No. This is a graph of CVEs over time. This is vulnerabilities in computer software over time. And you see the line goes up. Gets worse. It's going in the direction of badness. And somebody said to me, well, this is because we're discovering more security vulnerabilities. It's not necessarily because we're creating more. But I said, you think about cybersecurity. We're spending billions of dollars on cybersecurity and we still have these massive data breaches and people breaking into systems. Well, I thought technology was meant to make business more efficient. How is business going to be more efficient if you replace people with machines, but then you have to spend billions of dollars to secure the machines from hackers? I mean, previously, if you had stuff on paper in a filing cabinet, someone could break in and steal it from the filing cabinet, but that was pretty unlikely.
Has anyone ever read Kevin Mitnick's autobiography at all?
I met Kevin Mitnick in New York at a hacker conference. Yeah.
It's a very interesting read because he does point out that very few of the hacks that he did involved technology.
That's right. Yeah, Kevin Mitnick's thing was social engineering, like convincing people that, and this was apparently what seems to have happened with Qantas, right? Somebody's been convinced to hand over credentials and then they've, raided the database. So, but I mean, tech was supposed to improve efficiency for business. It's almost like, I don't understand why we have this mindset on the internet where we have to expect that all the time somebody is always trying to break into our systems in the most aggressive and violent way possible. It's almost like we don't have this with our houses. We close our doors at night and we lock them. Maybe you might lock them. Maybe you might be like my aunt and uncle who lived in Canberra who never locked their front door, even when they weren't at home. They don't live in Canberra anymore, so don't try and go and steal from their house. But, I think that it's not as if we have pretty weak locks on our doors, but we don't have people trying to raid our house every night and people trying to kind of constantly smash against the door to the extent that you've got to put up steel armour around your house so that nobody can break in. But this is what we're doing on the internet. It's almost like, rather than trying to defend against hackers, could we just ask people not to hack? Or to hack in a way that's ethical? Asking nicely? Why not? Why not? This is a thought experiment. I think it's almost like, and it's the same thing with Bitcoin, right? In terms of that, I feel like we're being punished when we don't cooperate and we don't get along with each other. In terms of cybersecurity, there's a price to pay for people being terrible on the internet, and that is that we've got to constantly pour huge amounts of money into cyber defense. With Bitcoin, there's a price to pay for not trusting anyone, and that is that you have to do proof of work and you have to burn enormous numbers of CPU cycles in order to be able to prove that you're trustworthy. So anyway, somebody ran the numbers recently on when you say thank you to AI. Does anybody do that? No. In ChatGPT, if ChatGPT says, well, the square root of whatever is this, and then you say, thank you, ChatGPT, and it says, oh, you're very welcome, and you're most welcome, and I'm here to help you at any time that you need me. And to produce that response, that uses energy, that uses electricity. And we've got to burn coal, or it's got to be generated in a nuclear power plant somewhere, and we sort of lose some more trees in the rainforest or something. Like, we could probably, it would be better for the environment if you were not polite to AI. Don't say thank you. It just uses CPU cycles, it uses more energy. It's crazy. Maybe we need one of these things, like a Dyson sphere, right? You capture all of the energy from the entire star, sort of put solar panels all around the sun floating in space, and we can make unlimited energy. And, this will let us get better all the time, because this is what tech does. We get better and we do it faster and faster, better, faster. What about this graph? Moore's law. Does anybody want to explain Moore's law? You might do a better job at it than me.
Moore's law was a theorem posed that roughly every few years computing power would double. However, it is effectively considered to be dead now that we're starting to hit the limits of the silicon node processes with the stereolithography technology available.
Not computer power, it's transistors per unit area.
That's right, close. Does that scare anybody? Does that upset anybody? I mean, it used to be that things just got better, and they got better faster and faster and faster. It's almost like in computing that we're hitting limits, that things are not going to get better faster and faster and faster all the time.
So my cynical comment in that space is the greater skill of the program, the greater ability to amplify the difference.
That's right. Maybe we can't burn fossil fuel infinitely. Maybe computers are not just going to get better and better and better forever at a faster and faster rate. Exactly what you just said. Looking at performance versus a VAX 11780, so using that as a baseline, and thinking that, you got the 1980s, things are getting faster 25% per year. Then you've got this sort of, maybe this is I've heard somebody explain this graph as being, this is the RISC era, reduced instruction set complexity, so the computer can be more efficient. And look at that, that's 52% per year, wow. And it's like, it really did make sense then that if I buy a computer, I'll throw it away in a year or two's time and buy the next one, because the next one is just going to be so much better, going to be a lot faster. But then...
Sorry, just going back to
yeah.
dynamics, yes, because this relates to this, is one of the major concerns about the increased use of AI is not just the electricity burn, but the increased usage of water.
That's right. And again, limits, right? Systems do not just grow forever in an unlimited fashion, especially not if it's exponential growth. Yeah, and then we're getting up to the point where, okay, we're starting to run out of steam in terms of what we can do with a single core, so we just have lots of cores. We have multi-core processors. You have 2 cores, 4 cores, 6 cores, 8 cores. Well, then we run into a problem with Amdahl's law, right? So Amdahl's law, which says that even if 95 or 99% of what you can do can be done in parallel, you've still got something that you need to do where all of the processes stop and have to talk to each other or communicate with main memory. Even if you've got 1% serial processing and you've got 99% parallel, that actually creates a mathematical limit on how much performance you can get by just increasing the number of cores. You eventually get to a certain number of cores where adding more cores doesn't make it faster. Then you've got all of these other issues. I strongly suggest you should watch a presentation, Sophie Wilson. Does anybody know Sophie Wilson? Co-inventor of the ARM processor, which created the mobile revolution and allowed you to have smartphones as they are today. Well, she gives a fantastic talk, and probably has for the last 10 or 20 years, about just this issue of that we're running into these limits. She talks about to make processors with the new process nodes now, we need to create these Star Wars space laser type machines where you're trying to create this extreme ultraviolet light. We have to shoot a powerful laser into a cloud of tin, and then that creates, it's incredible the amount of water, the amount of energy, the amount of expense to create these new processors. She talks about, it was a point where every time that we created a new chip, we would be using less power per transistor, less power, less power. Now we're starting to use more power. Where, processes are heating up, they're getting hotter and hotter and hotter. We've more got this effect of having dark silicon, where you buy a lot of transistors, but most of them have to be switched off most of the time, because otherwise the processor would melt It would get too hot and it stops working. So more transistors is not as useful these days, and we're not getting better and better and better all the time. So, I mean, if computing is a race anyway to make it faster and smaller and more efficient, why do we do retro computing? What's the point of retro computing, you know? Maybe you might say the solution is we should just be satisfied with having less or doing more with what we already have. But I mean, you know, retro computing, especially, we're dealing with sometimes quite old machines, and it's like we pour a lot of time and energy into these machines, keeping them running. What rational purpose does this hobby serve, retro computing, you know? Shouldn't we want everything to be faster and better and be using the latest things all the time? Yuck, you know? Go and buy the iPhone 20 or whatever's out now. Like, but, you know, perhaps the solution is in the past. You know, maybe we should think about, well, what would it have been like if we'd have kind of carried on with these old computers that we knew and loved? I think this is a great thought experiment. Has anybody heard that, you know, Perifractic, the YouTuber who does retro recipes, is now the new CEO of Commodore, is reviving Commodore International. And does anybody want to say something? We should not take too long because we're going to run out of time. But does anyone want to say something quickly about that? Anybody have any thoughts? No? Don't say anything that you don't want going on YouTube or other people hearing. No, I like Perifractic. I do think that it's sort of... but, you know, he sort of gives us this interesting thought experiment about what would have happened if Commodore hadn't gone bankrupt in 1994 and had have continued. Well, I think I know what would have happened. Let's go with that theoretical. We'd have Commodore Friends, the new social network brought to you by Commodore Computers, you know? Talk to your friends. This would have been what would have happened around about 2008 and 2009, you know? First, cute kittens. Then, Hitler. I mean, this is how everything goes, right? Why do we think that kind of reactivating nostalgia and using that to kind of inform the future? Why would we have any different future if things are...
Commodore wasn't an angel factory. They were another company that were trying to do things their way.
They're another company that were trying to...
And it was good while it lasted. It had some value, but really, for a lot of people of my generation, we only got into it once it was obsolete.
Yeah.
It became affordable.
Yeah.
It wasn't any better.
I better take this slide away before someone gets upset.
Sorry, it evoked
Yes, it'll evoke some strong feelings. I apologise if anybody in the room is Jewish, by the way. So, I mean, this is the sort of, this is a new Commodore 64, so $770 Australian, roughly, if you want the Founders Edition, the kind of maxed out edition Commodore 64. It's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know, like, I mean, I think that I have a lot of thoughts, but I think that, you know, their heart is in the right place in my mind, but I think, you know, we need to wait and see what actually happens. I think the proof is going to be in what actually occurs, because this is on their website. Although it feels a little AI generated to me. I don't want to accuse anybody of doing this with ChatGPT. I mean, it sounds good, but it also sounds a little AI generated. But it sort of says, you know, 1994, we blipped into a parallel universe where social media never took over, where cyberbullying algorithms that enslaved people and ad tracking never existed. Would be nice. Where computers remain tools of creativity rather than distraction, and where Commodore thrived. What do you think? Commodore is back. We're going to have this future, the future that we were promised, but that was taken away from us, you know? We're going to have to deliver what modern technology failed to, a sense of joy, clarity, harmony, and creative empowerment. Tech that serves us, not enslaves us. Tech that's more like 90s to 2000s devices in their techno-optimism, but built for today. Today's tech feels toxic, bloated, addictive. We wake to algorithmic noise, endless notifications, and devices that demand more. Now I really am just reading off the slide, aren't I? I'm sorry, you can read the slide. What do we think about this? Commodore, is it going to be the digital detox brand? Commodore, the digital detox brand. I think in a way, you know, there is demand for this. I mean, this is a market demand. I think where you know, people are feeling like, I'm upset about social media. I'm upset about the way technology went. It didn't all get better all the time, forever, and at an increasing rate, because we had fake news and we have hate and we have all the sorts of negatives that came along with this technology. So.
We see this with the Nokia rebuy, though. I mean, like, you sell the idea, you sell the name of it being a detox, but in the end, it's no different to anything else.
I'll just bring the microphone over. Right, go for it. Give us some
Oh gosh, no, not cynicism. It's more. We saw this with Nokia. You know, the name everyone associated with the good old days of the old mobile phones with no smart stuff, and yeah, it's a fun look, but it is in the past for a reason, and whether we like it or not, it is the past. It's not the future. So, similar with this, it's nice to think about it, but it's in the past. That's all.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, you've all been tricked because of the fact that you're here for my talk, which is really just about my marketing my own product, which who came around and saw that before? Probably most of the people in the room, because I told you to come to the talk. So, but you've seen what I'm working on, my Agape computer kit, where you build your own computer and you construct your own virtual world. But I think that I'm perhaps trying to think along the same lines as Perifractic and others in the industry of thinking, how do we make computing friendly again? Ownership and control is very important. How do we make it feel like it's yours and you have some control over it, and it's not other people telling you what to do and controlling the way that you use the technology? Micro-social, so small groups of people where we can behave more harmoniously rather than this big dog pile of 1 billion people screaming at each other all the time. And a tool to make you more human so that you're able to express your own humanity better, not the computer using you as a tool. So I'm not going to say that I've got the answer or that I'm going to do any better than anybody else in the tech industry on this front, but I think I'd just leave you with the thought that it's worth trying something. Which comes to the end of... I'm sorry, I'm leaving it on a kind of a note of... We've had a bit of sort of, well-justified cynicism, and I'm not really leaving you with all that much hope, aside from just buy my product, which is probably not going to be too helpful, but... do we have any questions or comments, though? Does anybody want to jump in?
How your new computer solves those questions, those social problems?
How does my new computer solve those social problems? I think it's, when you think about it, has anybody read anything by, who is the, I'm terrible, I'm having a brain fart now, Marshall McLuhan, who's done media studies. You know, the medium is the message. That's right.
Actually, originally the medium is the massage.
The massage. What is it? What is?
It's about the interface between the media is who engage with the influencers, your processes.
What is it? What does it? What does it mean? What does that mean? Do you want to have a go? What does it mean?
Well, it means basically that the medium. Sorry. Yeah. Basically, the simple thing is that your interaction with the medium shapes your perception of the world. And hence the original phrasing, the medium is the massage, which was phonetically misinterpreted as the medium is the message.
Yeah, and I think what that means in terms of computing is that when you create something, a piece of technology, it's not as if it's just being... The way that you design it, design is important. You want to design something, you can't guarantee that people are going to be friendly or they're going to be nice to each other or they're not going to use the technology in a terrible way. And you can't guarantee that it's going to make anybody's lives better. But you can, design is a way that you can try to, it was like, going back to Johnny Ive, I don't know, I'm not a big Johnny Ive fan, but I was just watching some videos of him recently and he was talking about staying up late at night or sort of working on the weekend and spending time when he should have been with his son, but working on how to make the cable go around and get tied up in the box so that it could go in the box, and when you bought the product you'd take it out and you'd undo the cable and it was a pleasant experience. And he talks about how having that be designed shows you that someone cares about you as the consumer, that they have respect for you, that they bothered to design it to make it pleasant and to make it useful. So I think that's the answer to that question. I think through design is the only way we can do that. I'm not a designer, so I'm not sure that this is something that I'm capable of, but I think trying to actually do something where we're being a little bit sort of, we're putting that out there, that there is an intention that it be more friendly, there is an intention that it be more fun, and there is an intention that it be more kind. I think that there has been a problem with the technology industry probably for 20 years where we have this feeling of, well, we're just going to give you the system and you'll do whatever you want with the system. The way that we design it doesn't really matter all that much. Or the design is very functional. It's like we're going to give you an ability to send messages to each other and you'll just do what you want with that system. I think the way the system is designed can affect those messages. It can affect, the way in which we communicate with each other. Yeah. Does anybody else want to make a comment or ask a question? We're kind of probably at the end, but if anybody wants to... Yeah,
just a small thing, but something I've done over the last year is I've tried to remove every algorithm from my life. I don't want any algorithmic feeds or anything, and so I only get sent posts by my friends or stuff like that. I have YouTube blocked, so I can't watch the homepage. I have Instagram completely uninstalled, everything like that. And being more intentional, every time I go on my computer, I still have full access, but I always have to be mindful and cognitively aware of what I'm looking for. And I think that's helped me a lot. So that's something small that can be done.
Yeah, I think it's sort of right to be cynical, especially if somebody's trying to sell you something. But I think in the tech industry, we have to try. We have to be willing to do something different than what we've been doing until now. Yep.
Yeah, actually, I'll add to that comment as well. I might engage with a lot of those things because, unfortunately, it's a way to engage with friends. But I've been probably had a net presence for well over 30 years, but I find that I've got a very, very tiny fingerprint on the net. Whenever I try to look myself up, I do find it difficult to find anything that is attributable to myself, because I do curate things, and when I hear about all these things that are on Twitter feeds and stuff like that, funnily enough, I never see them, I only hear about them. And just as a final comment, if anyone's interested in continuing this sort of discussion or continuing the space, there's a couple of very interesting podcasts that follow up on it. One is This Machine Kills, which is by a group of people who talk a lot about Neo-Luddism, and the other one, rather appropriately, Tech Won't Save Us.
Yeah, great, thank you. Anyway, I think that's probably, we should wrap it up. But if anybody wants to come and have a chat afterward or talk to each other, then feel free. Thank you.